The call came on the 5th day of my unemployment, when the electricity had just been shut off in my studio apartment, and my world had shrunk to the glow of my dying phone. My screen lit up with my brother's name, a name I hadn't seen in weeks despite my desperate texts about losing my job and facing eviction. Marcus. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My brother's voice was crisp as fresh currency. I need you at the industry gala tomorrow by 8 for the label launch. Everyone who matters will be there. The room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. 5 days I'd been surviving on ramen and tap water, sending out countless resumes after being unceremoniously laid off from my recording studio assistant position, and he was calling about a networking party. Marcus, I'm broke and about to be homeless. I can't afford a gala outfit or even the gas to get there, I said, my voice sounding distant, hollow. His tone sharpened like a producer's critique of a flat note. The connections are what matter. If you don't come, I'll have to reconsider that producer introduction I promised. You know, the one that could actually save your pathetic music career. A strange heat spread through my chest as 10 years of conditional brotherhood crystallized in that single cruel ultimatum. The weight of my brother's disapproval, a burden I'd carried since our childhood piano recitals, suddenly felt irrelevant compared to the final notice letters piling up on my counter. I might be on the streets next week, Marcus, I said, my words hanging in the stale apartment air. Family connections are a two-way street, Sophia, he replied, ice-coating each syllable. If you don't show up looking the part, don't expect my industry support anymore. My name is Sophia Chen. I'm 28 and a struggling songwriter. This is the story of how I finally chose the music that mattered. For months before my layoff, I'd noticed the growing distance between Marcus and me. His criticism of my songwriting, my wasted potential, my tiny Los Angeles apartment that was nothing like his sleek Hollywood Hills mansion, with its gleaming grand piano that was more for show than actual playing. My older brother had always been the golden child, his classical training and connections in the industry a constant counterpoint to my raw, unpolished style. While he climbed the corporate ladder at Atlantic Records, I was writing songs in coffee shops and teaching piano to neighborhood kids. I'd been trying anyway, stretching every dollar from my studio assistant job and weekend gigs since Jason, my bandmate and fiancé, left with our shared equipment and half-finished album 6 months ago. I'd send my demos to Marcus occasionally, grateful for his professional ear, while ignoring how he would send them back with wholesale rewrites that stripped away everything authentic about my sound. Your melodies are too niche, too emotional, he would say during our increasingly rare phone calls. The industry wants formulaic hits, not your diary entries set to music. I balanced it all. The heartbreak of abandonment, the financial strain, my brother's conditional support, because you don't give up on family until the day the recording studio downsized and my position as assistant engineer was eliminated. The first 72 hours passed in a blur of panic attacks and terrifying financial calculations. My father, Richard, called immediately, offering to wire money to cover my rent. "You're not alone, Sophia," he whispered, voice thick with concern. "Your brother's busy with the new label launch," he explained apologetically. "But he's keeping an ear out for opportunities." I nodded, too drained to process the sting of Marcus's absence. I curled up on my secondhand couch, refusing to give up as I applied for every music-adjacent job I could find, while watching my bank account drain with alarming speed. I practiced my songs constantly, afraid silence might let my dream slip away entirely. By the 5th morning, my landlord had left another voicemail about the late rent. Hope flickered like the last ember in a dying fire. That's when my phone buzzed with my brother's call about the industry gala. Standing in my darkened apartment, the ultimatum hanging between us, something inside me finally broke free. 10 years of seeking approval, of making excuses for the coldness, of believing I was somehow defective, because I couldn't write the commercial hits he respected. "I choose my music," I said, my voice suddenly calm and unshakable. "Goodbye, Marcus. I hung up, deleted his contact, and walked to my keyboard, a strange peace settling over me despite the chaos. The battery-powered instrument glowed softly in the darkness as my fingers found the melody I'd been avoiding, the one about betrayal and false promises that had felt too raw to finish after Jason left. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Everything okay?" texted Elena, the barista who'd become my friend during countless hours of songwriting at her cafe. "Not really," I admitted. "But I'm exactly where I need to be." The keys felt solid beneath my fingers as doubt crept in. Marcus's industry connections represented opportunities I couldn't replace on my own. Would my decision hurt my career long term? The weight of being a struggling artist felt suddenly heavier. My phone buzzed again. "Jason, this time. Marcus says you're skipping the gala. Your career's tanking, but it's just one night. Borrow a dress at least." I stared at the screen, stunned. Jason, who'd walked out on our relationship and band, was now apparently in my brother's inner circle. My career was tanking, but he wanted me to play dress up and smile. More texts followed from mutual friends in the industry, all focused on the gala, none asking how I was holding up after the layoff. Their priorities cut deeper than my brother's threat, revealing a painful truth I'd been avoiding. Their version of music was about connections and appearances, not authentic expression. As evening fell, I was working through the bridge of my new song when a notification lit up my screen. An email from Streetlight Coffee House confirming my spot at their open mic night. I'd signed up weeks ago, before the layoff, when things were merely difficult instead of desperate. Now it felt like a lifeline. With my electricity cut off, I couldn't charge my phone, couldn't look up bus routes, couldn't do anything but trust my instincts. I grabbed my guitar, the last valuable possession I hadn't considered selling, and walked the 3 miles to the coffee shop in the gathering darkness. The open mic was happening while Marcus's industry gala unfolded across town, but I was exactly where I needed to be. Choosing my raw, unproduced sound over industry networking felt like breaking free from chains I'd carried my entire career. By the time I arrived at Streetlight, my fingers were stiff from the cold and my stomach ached with hunger, but something inside me had solidified into certainty. The shop was warm, filled with about 20 people scattered among mismatched furniture. Elena spotted me from behind the counter and rushed over. "You look terrible," she said bluntly, pressing a sandwich and coffee into my hands. "On the house. You're up in 3 performers." I ate quickly, the first real food in days, watching a spoken-word poet captivate the room with verses about urban isolation. When the host called my name, I stepped onto the small wooden platform, adjusting the microphone with trembling hands. "This is a new one," I said simply. "It's called Conditional." The first chord silenced the gentle hum of conversation. I closed my eyes and let the melody carry me, the lyrics pouring out about false promises and the freedom found in walking away. The bridge, the part I'd been working on when the email came, emerged fully formed, stronger than anything I'd written before. When I opened my eyes as the final note faded, the silence was absolute. Then a smattering of applause grew into something thunderous for the small space. A woman in the front row was wiping her eyes. A man near the back was nodding, recognition plain on his face. As I stepped off the platform, still vibrating with the vulnerability of performance, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair approached me. "That was extraordinary," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Lena Winters, independent producer. Do you have more where that came from?" My heart stuttered. Lena Winters had produced some of my favorite indie artists, creating albums that prioritized emotional authenticity over commercial appeal. "A whole notebook full?" I managed to reply. "Let's talk," she said, gesturing to a quiet corner. "There's something raw in your voice that can't be manufactured." As we settled into worn armchairs, my phone lit up with a final message from Marcus. "You're missing the chance of a lifetime. Don't come crying when your music goes nowhere." I turned the phone face down without responding, focusing instead on Lena's questions about my influences and vision. By the time our conversation ended, I had an invitation to her studio the following week, and her card tucked safely in my pocket. The walk home was long but lighter somehow. My apartment was still dark, my problems still real, but something fundamental had shifted. I slept on my couch with my guitar beside me, strangely peaceful despite the uncertainty. Morning brought a knock at my door, Elena with a bag of day-old pastries and determined expression. "You can crash at my place until you figure things out," she announced without preamble. "And the cafe needs someone to play Thursday and Friday nights. It doesn't pay much, but it's something." Tears threatened as her kindness pierced through the armor I'd built against disappointment. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. She shrugged. "Your music helped me through my divorce last year. Art matters, even when the industry says it doesn't." That simple statement became my mantra over the following weeks. I moved my essentials to Elena's spare room, stored the rest with my father, and surrendered my apartment. The cafe gigs expanded to 3 nights weekly, providing enough for basic needs while I worked with Lena on developing my sound. My father visited, bringing home-cooked meals and quiet encouragement. "Your mother would be so proud," he said one evening, referencing the classical pianist who'd inspired both Marcus and me before cancer took her when I was 12. She never cared about fame, only about moving people with music. Marcus remained silent, his absence a dull ache I was learning to live with. Jason occasionally sent texts, increasingly curious about my project with Lena Winters, but I maintained my distance, protecting the fragile new growth of my authentic voice. 3 months after that pivotal open mic night, Lena presented me with a contract for a 5-song EP under her independent label. The advance was modest but sufficient to secure a small apartment, with enough left over for proper equipment. More importantly, I would retain creative control and rights to my music. "This won't make you rich," she warned as I signed the paperwork with shaking hands. "But it will be genuinely yours." The recording sessions stretched through summer into fall, each song distilled from the painful clarity that had emerged from my rock bottom. Engineers who had worked with household names nodded appreciatively as my tracks took shape. Session musicians added texture while respecting the vulnerability at each song's core. The night we finalized the last mix, Lena handed me a glass of champagne. "To authenticity," she toasted. "Now comes the hard part, getting it heard." She wasn't wrong. My EP, titled Conditional, released digitally with minimal marketing beyond Lena's network and my social media. The cafe performances continued, now featuring my recorded songs, but the audience remained small. Some nights, playing to nearly empty tables, doubt would creep back in. Had I made a catastrophic mistake, burning bridges for artistic integrity no one would ever hear? Then came the email from a music supervisor at an independent film studio, requesting permission to use Conditional, the title track, in an upcoming drama. The sync fee was substantial, more money than I'd seen at once in years. More importantly, it would place my music in a context where its emotional honesty could shine. The film premiered at Sundance 4 months later. I sat in the darkness of the theater, heart pounding as my song played over a pivotal scene about a character choosing her own path despite family pressure. The scene ended, my voice faded, and someone in the audience whispered, "Who is that singer?" Within days, streaming numbers for the EP began a steady climb. Music blogs posted favorable reviews, highlighting the, quote, unflinching honesty and refreshing lack of production tricks. A prominent podcast featured Conditional as its closing theme. Small but meaningful royalty payments appeared in my account. It wasn't fame, not even close, but it was validation of the truest kind. My music, uncompromised and authentic, was finding the people who needed it. 6 months after the film's release, I was setting up for my regular cafe performance when I looked up to see Marcus standing awkwardly by the door. He was impeccably dressed as always, but something in his posture had changed. The industry confidence replaced by uncharacteristic hesitation. "Can we talk?" he asked when our eyes met. I nodded toward an empty table, continuing my setup while he waited. This conversation would happen on my terms, in my space. When I finally sat across from him, he spoke first. "I heard your song in that film," he said. "Then I found the EP. It's extraordinary, Sophia. Nothing like what I thought music needed to be." I waited, neither accepting the compliment nor dismissing it. "I was wrong," he continued, the words clearly difficult for him. About your sound, about what success looks like. The label is interested in your next project, actually. They're calling it authentic voice now, like it's some new trend instead of what you've been doing all along. A bitter laugh escaped me. Let me guess, you're here to offer representation? He flinched but shook his head. I'm here as your brother, just that. I missed you, and I'm sorry. The sincerity in his voice was unexpected. I studied his face, searching for the calculated industry mask, finding instead something that reminded me of the boy who had first taught me piano scales before competition warped our relationship. I have a producer, I said finally, and a small label that respects my vision. I know, he replied. I'm not offering anything except an apology, and maybe dinner sometime, if you want. As he rose to leave, he placed a small package on the table. From Dad and me, for the show tonight. After he left, I unwrapped the gift, a vintage pitch pipe that had belonged to our mother, something I'd admired in childhood but Marcus had claimed after her death. A note in my father's handwriting read simply, "For the true musician in the family." That night's performance felt different. The cafe was unusually full, word having spread about the filmmaker's song. My fingers found the keys with renewed confidence, as I introduced a new composition inspired by reconciliation and second chances. In the years since that pivotal moment when I chose my music over my brother's connections, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. The EP had found its audience, not millions but thousands who connected deeply with its honesty. Lena and I were working on a full-length album, taking our time to preserve the authenticity that had become my signature. My financial situation remained modest but stable. Cafe performances, film placements, streaming revenue, and occasional session work created a patchwork income that supported a simple but sustainable life. More importantly, I woke each morning excited to create, unburdened by others' expectations. Marcus and I were rebuilding slowly. Our relationship fundamentally changed. He had left his executive position to start a small artist development company focused on musicians the major labels considered too niche. We met monthly for coffee, carefully navigating the new terrain of mutual respect. One evening, scrolling through streaming metrics for my songs, I noticed a playlist that had featured Conditional prominently, curated by Marcus himself, entitled Songs That Changed Me. He had never mentioned it during our cautious reconciliation coffees. I didn't reach out immediately. Some relationships can't return to what they were, but perhaps they can evolve into something healthier. The betrayal at my lowest point had forced me to make an impossible choice that turned out to be the simplest one. Choose authentic expression over external validation. Choose artistic integrity over industry formulas. Choose the family we create, like Elena and Lena, over the family that demands conformity. I still have the phone with those cruel text messages from my darkest days. A reminder that sometimes the worst moments lead us exactly where we need to be. The journey cost me temporary security, but gave me something money can't buy. The knowledge that my voice, just as it is, deserves to be heard. Last week, a young songwriter approached me after a cafe performance. "Your music helped me leave a toxic relationship," she said, eyes bright with unshed tears. "How did you find the courage to be so honest?" I thought about rock bottom, about disconnected electricity and unanswered texts, about choosing authenticity when it seemed like professional suicide. I stopped trying to be what others wanted, I told her, and started being what my music needed me to be. That night, I wrote to Marcus about the young songwriter, sharing how meaningful her words had been. His response came quickly. "That's real success. Mom would be proud." And for the first time in years, I believed he was right. That night, after the open mic, sleep evaded me. The conversation with Lena Winters replayed in my mind like a favorite melody as I lay on Elena's pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling. Possibility, that dangerous, beautiful thing, had crept back into my life precisely when I'd surrendered to rock bottom. The irony wasn't lost on me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Elena's apartment was small but warm, with music posters covering every available wall space, and a collection of vinyl records that made my heart ache with envy. Her generosity had saved me from the streets, but I knew I couldn't stay long. At 28, Crashing on a friend's couch felt like admitting defeat, even as professional opportunity knocked. Dawn was breaking when my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Sophia, it's Lena. Been thinking about your sound all night. Can you come to the studio today? Bring your notebook and guitar. Address below." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. This was happening fast. Too fast for my cautious, rejection-scarred mind to process. Elena found me sitting frozen on the couch when she emerged for her early shift. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I wordlessly handed her my phone, watching her eyes widen as she read the message. "Holy shit, Sophia, this is it. This is your moment." What if it's not? The question escaped before I could stop it, the fear behind it raw and ugly. What if she hears more of my songs and realizes last night was a fluke? What if I'm not good enough for a real producer's time? What if you shut up and take a shower?" Elena interrupted, pulling me to my feet with surprising strength for someone barely 5 feet tall. "Your what-ifs are boring. Go get ready." Her bluntness shocked a laugh out of me, breaking the spiral of doubt. I showered quickly in her tiny bathroom, borrowing clean clothes and trying not to think about how few of my own possessions remained. My guitar, a mid-range acoustic I'd saved for months to buy, and the notebook filled with lyrics felt like the only real parts of me left. The studio address Lena had sent was in Silver Lake, a neighborhood where I'd occasionally performed at small venues but could never afford to live. The building was unassuming, a converted warehouse with no flashy signage, just a simple number beside the door. It took 3 deep breaths before I could make myself knock. The woman who answered wasn't Lena, but a young assistant with bright purple hair and an assessing gaze. "Sophia Chen?" she asked, stepping aside when I nodded. "I'm Zoe. Lena's finishing up a call. Follow me." The interior was nothing like the sleek corporate studios where Marcus had occasionally allowed me to visit. This space felt lived in, with vintage instruments displayed alongside platinum records and framed festival posters. A wall of photographs showed Lena with various artists, none household names, but all with distinct visual identities. "Lena believes in artists who know who they are," Zoe commented, following my gaze to the photos. "Not who the market wants them to be." Before I could respond, a door opened and Lena emerged, phone still pressed to her ear. "Tell them we need another week," she was saying. "The strings aren't right, and I won't release it until they are." She ended the call and turned to me with a smile that transformed her serious face. "Sophia, you came. Excellent." For the next 4 hours, I played every original song in my notebook, pausing only when Lena asked questions about lyrics or melody choices. She took notes continuously, occasionally nodding or raising an eyebrow but offering no judgment. By the time we finished, my voice was raw and my fingertips tender. "You have something rare," she said finally, closing her notebook. "Authenticity without pretension, technical skill without showing off, and lyrics that don't hide behind metaphors." Relief and exhaustion crashed over me in equal measure. "Thank you," I managed. "Don't thank me yet," she replied, her expression turning businesslike. "The industry will try to smooth your edges, make you more marketable. They'll suggest changing your image, your sound, even your name." The echo of Marcus's criticisms rang in my ears. "I've heard it before." "I'm sure you have. But here's what they don't tell you. Those changes kill what makes you special." She leaned forward. "I want to produce an EP with you. 5 songs, your best work, recorded the way they deserve to be heard. It won't make you famous overnight, but it will be true to your voice." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The offer was everything I dreamed of, yet fear clutched at my throat. "I can't pay for studio time," I admitted. "I just lost my apartment. I'm sleeping on a friend's couch." Lena waved away my concerns. "My label covers production costs. The deal would include a modest advance, enough to get you settled somewhere, against future royalties. You'd keep ownership of your masters and publishing rights. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. Years of industry warnings from Marcus had taught me to be suspicious. What's the catch? A smile tugged at her lips. The catch is, I expect total commitment to the project. No commercial compromises. No watering down your lyrics to make them more universal. And no running back to the mainstream industry the minute they notice you. That's not a catch, I said, surprised by the conviction in my voice. That's a dream, she extended her hand. Then let's make it real. Come back tomorrow with a list of your 5 strongest songs. We'll start pre-production next week. I floated back to Elena's apartment, the contract details Lena had outlined swirling in my head. It wasn't the major label deal Marcus had always insisted was the only path worth pursuing, but it offered something more valuable, artistic respect. Elena was still at the cafe, so I left a note promising details later and headed there, needing to share the news with someone who would understand its significance. The afternoon crowd was thin, allowing her to take a break when she saw me. Well, she demanded, sliding into the booth across from me. I could barely contain my excitement as I explained Lena's offer. It's happening, Elena. My music. My way. I never doubted it, she replied, though we both knew that was a lie. She'd seen me at my lowest, held me through panic attacks when the eviction notice arrived. But what about practical stuff? The advance sounds great, but how long before you see any money? The question deflated my bubble slightly. Lena had mentioned paperwork and processes that could take weeks. Meanwhile, I had $7 to my name and was entirely dependent on Elena's generosity. I'll pick up more shifts here, Elena said, reading my expression. You can help out until things get sorted. Before I could respond, the cafe door opened and a familiar figure entered. Jason, my ex. He spotted me immediately, his expression cycling through surprise, calculation, and finally a practiced charm as he approached our table. Sophia, he said, as if we'd parted on friendly terms rather than with him taking half our equipment. I heard you were playing open mics around here. Elena stiffened beside me. I need to get back to work, she muttered, shooting me a warning look before retreating behind the counter. What do you want, Jason? I asked, too emotionally drained for pleasantries. He slid into the booth uninvited. Marcus mentioned you were having some troubles. I thought I'd check on you. His gaze traveled over my borrowed clothes, and I resisted the urge to cross my arms defensively. I'm fine, I replied, the lie coming easily after years of practice. Just busy with a new project. His eyebrows rose slightly. The Lena Winters thing? Marcus said she approached you at an open mic. That's interesting. Her label is pretty niche. The casual revelation that Marcus and Jason were discussing my career made my stomach twist. It's exactly what I want, I said, gathering my courage. Someone who respects my artistic vision. Jason's laugh held no humor. Artistic vision doesn't pay rent, Soph. You know that better than anyone right now. He leaned closer, his cologne bringing unwanted memories. I could talk to some people. The band's doing well with the new singer. We could use some of your songs. Properly arranged, of course. The offer was a knife twisted in an old wound. The band? Our band? Continuing without me, potentially profiting from my compositions while I couch-surfed. My songs stay with me, I said, voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. Don't be stubborn, he countered. This indie artist fantasy is cute, but you're not getting any younger. The industry doesn't have patience for late bloomers. At 28, I was hardly ancient, but I recognized the tactic, the same one Marcus had employed for years. Create urgency, foster insecurity, position yourself as the solution. I'll take my chances with Lena, I replied, standing to signal the conversation's end. Jason shrugged, all calculated indifference. Your choice. But when this little project fizzles out, Marcus and I might not be so willing to help. He slid a business card across the table. Think about it. After he left, Elena returned, practically vibrating with protective fury. The audacity of that man! She fumed. Showing up here like he's offering salvation after what he did to you. I stared at the business card, emblazoned with the logo of a major label subsidiary where Jason apparently now worked. The connection to Marcus was clear. My brother had likely helped him land the position. They're scared, I realized suddenly. What? Elena looked confused. Marcus, Jason, they're actually worried about what I might do with Lena. The thought was strangely empowering. They wouldn't bother trying to derail it otherwise. That night, instead of the crushing anxiety that had become my constant companion, I felt a different energy coursing through me, determination bordering on defiance. I spread my song notebooks across Elena's living room floor, evaluating each composition with fresh eyes. Which 5 best represented my voice? Which told the truest stories? By morning, I had my list. 5 songs that charted the emotional landscape of the past few years. The betrayals, the struggles, but also moments of unexpected beauty and resilience. I texted the titles to Lena, who responded immediately. Perfect selections. Studio tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring that fire I heard in your voice yesterday. The following weeks passed in a blur of creative intensity. Lena's production style was collaborative but uncompromising, pushing me to find deeper emotional truth in each performance. We worked with a small team of session musicians, who added subtle layers to the arrangements, without overshadowing the raw core of each song. The modest advance came through faster than expected, allowing me to secure a tiny studio apartment not far from Elena's place. The space was barely larger than a walk-in closet, but it was mine, paid for by my music, not family charity or romantic compromise. My father visited the studio during recording, sitting quietly in the control room with tears in his eyes as I laid down vocal tracks. "Your mother would be so proud," he said afterward, embracing me with rare demonstrativeness. "This is what music should be, something that moves people." His support was a balm to the lingering hurt of Marcus's absence. My brother remained silent throughout the recording process, though industry gossip occasionally reached us that he was tracking my project with interest. Jason made 2 more attempts to rescue me from my indie path, each offer more financially tempting but creatively restrictive than the last. The day we finalized the master recordings, Lena organized a small celebration at the studio. Elena, my father, and the session musicians gathered around as we played the finished EP from start to finish. The sound was exactly what I'd hoped for. Intimate yet powerful, my voice and guitar at the forefront, supported by arrangements that enhanced rather than obscured the emotional core of each song. "This is just the beginning," Lena said, raising a toast. "Next comes the hard part, getting it heard in a saturated market. But authentic voices find their audience. Always." She wasn't exaggerating about the challenge. The EP, titled simply Unvarnished, released digitally with minimal marketing beyond Lena's industry connections and my social media presence. Initial streams were modest, reviews were positive but few, and the financial return barely covered a month's rent. Doubt began to creep back in as weeks passed without the momentum we'd hoped for. I continued performing at local venues, selling hand-packaged CDs after shows. But the audience remained small. Some nights, singing to nearly empty rooms, I would remember Jason's warning about indie artist fantasies and late bloomers. Then came an unexpected email from a music supervisor at an independent film studio. She had discovered Conditional, the most personal track on the EP, through one of Lena's industry contacts and wanted to use it in a pivotal scene in an upcoming drama. The sync fee was substantial, more than I'd made from all streaming combined. More importantly, the film was slated for festival circuits, platforms where thoughtful, emotionally resonant stories found their audience. My music would be heard in context that matched its intention. The night I signed the licensing agreement, my phone lit up with a text from Marcus, the first direct contact since our confrontation months earlier. "Heard about the film placement. Smart move. Call me if you want to discuss next steps." I stared at the message, emotions warring within me. Part of me, the part still wounded by his abandonment when I needed him most, wanted to ignore it entirely. Another part recognized the olive branch, however businesslike its presentation. After careful consideration, I replied with deliberate neutralness. "Thanks, working with Lena on next steps." His response came quickly. "Lena's good for artistic development. When you're ready for wider distribution, my door is open." The implication was clear. He still believed mainstream success was the only real measure of musical achievement. But there was something different in his tone. A respect that hadn't been there before. 3 months later, the film premiered at Sundance. I sat in the darkened theater, heart racing as the scene approached. When my voice filled the space, accompanying a moment of profound character transformation, goosebumps rose on my arms. This was why I created music, to connect, to make people feel something real. The film received critical acclaim, and with it came attention to the soundtrack. Streaming numbers for Unvarnished began a steady climb. Music blogs posted thoughtful reviews, noting the refreshing authenticity and emotional clarity of the recordings. A prominent podcast featured Conditional as its closing theme, exposing the song to thousands of new listeners. Small but meaningful royalty payments appeared in my account, with increasing frequency. It wasn't wealth by any measure, but it was sustainability, proof that creating honest music could actually support a modest living. More importantly, messages began arriving from listeners who had found solace or strength in my songs. A woman recovering from cancer who played resilient during chemotherapy sessions. A college student who used Conditional to find courage to leave an abusive relationship. A widow who found Remember helped him process his grief. These connections, human, specific, meaningful, were worth more than any industry accolade Marcus had ever dangled before me. This was success on my own terms, measured not in chart positions but in lives touched. As winter turned to spring, my performance calendar filled with small but respectable venues across the West Coast. I was building an audience gradually but genuinely, each show adding new listeners who connected with the music on a personal level rather than following industry hype. Lena and I began discussing a full-length album, taking our time to ensure each song maintained the integrity that had become my signature. My financial situation remained modest but stable. Venue performances, film placements, streaming revenue, and occasional session work created a patchwork income that supported a simple but sustainable life. Then came the email that changed everything. An invitation to perform at a prestigious acoustic music festival where many independent artists had launched broader careers. The lineup included several of my musical heroes, artists who had built successful careers outside the mainstream machine. The night before I was scheduled to leave for the festival, a knock came at my apartment door. When I opened it, Marcus stood in the hallway, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I heard about the festival," he said without preamble. "It's a big opportunity." I nodded, waiting. This was the first time he'd sought me out in person since everything fell apart. "I was wrong," he continued, the words clearly difficult for him. "About your music, about what success looks like. I've been listening to the EP, really listening. And it's extraordinary, Sophia. Nothing like what I thought music needed to be." The admissions stunned me into silence. Marcus had never acknowledged being wrong about anything, least of all my creative choices. "The label is interested in your next project, actually," he added. "They're calling it authentic voice now, like it's some new trend instead of what you've been doing all along." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Let me guess. You're here to offer representation?" He flinched but shook his head. "I'm here as your brother. Just that. I missed you, and I'm sorry." The sincerity in his voice was unexpected. I studied his face, searching for the calculated industry mask, finding instead something that reminded me of the boy who had first taught me chord progressions before competition warped our relationship. "I have a producer," I said finally, "and a label that respects my vision." "I know," he replied. "I'm not offering anything except an apology. And maybe a ride to the airport tomorrow, if you want." As he turned to leave, he handed me a small package. "From Dad and me. For the festival." After he left, I unwrapped the gift, a vintage leather guitar strap with my initials tooled into the design. A note in my father's handwriting read simply, "For the true musician in the family." The festival performance the following weekend felt different than any show I'd played before. Standing on that stage, I could see faces in the audience lighting up with recognition when I began Conditional, people who knew my music, who had sought it out despite its lack of mainstream promotion. In the years since that pivotal moment when I chose my music over my brother's connections, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. Rock bottom had indeed become the solid foundation upon which I built something authentic and sustainable. Not fame, not even close, but something more valuable: artistic integrity paired with genuine connection. Marcus and I were rebuilding slowly. Our relationship fundamentally changed. He had shifted his focus at the label, advocating for artists with distinctive voices, rather than commercial potential alone. We met monthly for coffee, carefully navigating the new terrain of mutual respect. One evening, reviewing analytics for my music, I noticed a corporate playlist that had featured Resilient prominently, curated by Marcus's division and titled Voices That Matter. He had never mentioned it during our cautious reconciliation coffees. I texted him a simple question mark with a screenshot of the playlist. His response came quickly: "Your voice matters. I should have recognized that sooner." Some relationships can't return to what they were, but perhaps they can evolve into something healthier. The betrayal at my lowest point had forced me to make an impossible choice that turned out to be the simplest one. Choose authentic expression over external validation. Choose artistic integrity over industry formulas. Choose the family and friends who support your true voice over those who demand you conform to their expectations. When my first full album released the following year, it debuted on 3 specialized charts. Not the mainstream rankings Marcus had once insisted were the only measure of success, but platforms where artistic integrity was valued above commercial appeal. The reviews were thoughtful and positive, the sales modest but steadily growing. The album launch party was small, held at Elena's cafe where it had all begun. Lena was there, along with the session musicians who had become friends. My father sat proudly in the front row, and in the back, quietly supportive, stood Marcus, no longer trying to reshape my music, but finally hearing it for what it was. Rock bottom had indeed become my foundation. Not for superstardom, but for something far more sustainable. A life where my authentic voice could be heard by those who needed it most. Where success was measured not in platinum records, but in the messages from listeners whose lives were touched by my honesty. As I often tell aspiring songwriters who approach me after shows, your lowest point can become your launching pad, not to fame, but to truth. And truth, unlike fame, lasts forever. The morning after the festival performance changed everything. I woke up to my phone buzzing incessantly with notifications. Streaming numbers surging, social media followers multiplying, and emails from venues across the country requesting booking information. Something had shifted overnight, a tipping point reached when I least expected it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The festival organizer called while I was still trying to process the sudden attention. "Your performance struck a chord," she explained. Someone posted a clip of Conditional that's gone viral. Over 1 million views already. People are connecting with your authenticity in a big way. I scrambled to open the video, hands trembling. There I was on the festival stage, stripped down to just voice and guitar, eyes closed as I delivered the most vulnerable verse of Conditional. The comments section overflowed with responses. This is what music is supposed to be. Finally, something real. Who is this artist? Why haven't I heard her before? Elena burst into my apartment without knocking, coffee and pastries balanced precariously in her arms. "Have you seen it?" she demanded, dropping breakfast on my tiny kitchen counter. "You're everywhere this morning." Quote, "I don't understand," I admitted, still scrolling through comments. "It's the same song I've been performing for months. Why now?" "Because it was the right audience," she said simply. "People who actually care about music, not just the industry. And they're spreading the word." My phone rang again. Lena this time. "We need to talk strategy," she said without preamble. "This momentum is exactly what we've been building toward, but we need to handle it carefully. Can you come to the studio in an hour?" By the time I arrived, Lena had assembled a small team in the conference room, her marketing director, digital strategist, and touring manager. Charts and projections covered the whiteboard, streaming analytics displayed on a large monitor. "Here's where we stand," Lena began. "All business. Your EP streams are up 800% overnight. conditional, is trending on 3 platforms. We're getting inquiries from venues, festivals, and yes, major labels. She fixed me with a steady gaze. This is the inflection point, Sophia. What happens next defines your career path. The room fell silent as everyone turned to me. 6 months ago, I would have been overwhelmed by this attention, desperate for validation and willing to compromise for wider recognition. But rock bottom had gifted me with clarity about what mattered. We stay independent, I said firmly. We scale organically, maintain creative control, and focus on connecting with the audience that actually resonates with the music. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Lena's smile was brilliant. Exactly what I hoped you'd say. Now let's map out how we do that without burning you out or selling your soul. The strategy we developed was measured and intentional. A carefully curated tour of mid-sized venues, strategic collaborations with established independent artists, and a documentary-style video series capturing the authentic creative process behind my music. No corporate sponsorships, no glossy makeovers, no watering down the content to appeal to wider audiences. The major labels will come calling, Lena warned as we finalized the plan. They'll offer advances that make our budget look like pocket change. They'll promise exposure beyond what we can deliver. Are you sure you can resist that? I thought about Marcus and his world of platinum records and stadium tours, of artists whose authentic voices became diluted with each commercial success. I'm sure, I answered, because I've seen the alternative and it costs too much. True to Lena's prediction, the offers began arriving the following week. Executives who wouldn't have returned my calls months earlier suddenly wanted meetings, promising resources and exposure that Lena's boutique label couldn't match. Each proposal came with subtle caveats, suggestions about broadening my appeal or commercial polish that betrayed their fundamental misunderstanding of what made my music connect with listeners. The most surprising call came from Marcus himself, not as an industry representative but as my brother. I won't pretend I'm not impressed, he said, an unfamiliar humility in his tone. You've proven me wrong in the best possible way. How so? I asked, cautious but curious. You've built something sustainable on your own terms, he replied. Something real. The label execs are scrambling to understand why your numbers are growing while their manufactured acts are stagnating. He paused. They don't get it, but I'm starting to. His words meant more than any corporate offer. Marcus had been my first musical influence, teaching me chords before I could properly hold a guitar. His validation, earned through my own path rather than following his, carried weight I hadn't expected. I'm launching a new division at the label, he continued, focused on authentic artist development, minimal corporate interference. If you ever want to talk about it, not now, but someday, I'd value your perspective. The conversation marked a turning point in our relationship, no longer defined by his condescension or my desperate need for approval, but by mutual professional respect. We were finding our way back to being siblings, rather than industry competitors. As summer turned to fall, my first proper tour took shape. 25 cities in 8 weeks, venues ranging from intimate listening rooms to respected theater spaces. Elena took a leave from the cafe to join as my tour manager, her organizational skills and protective instincts proving invaluable on the road. The tour preparation consumed every waking hour, leaving little time to process how dramatically my circumstances had changed. Just months earlier, I'd been facing homelessness, my dreams seemingly shattered beyond repair. Now I was rehearsing with a small backing band, approving merchandise designs, and watching ticket sales steadily climb across the country. The night before departure, I found myself alone in my apartment, surrounded by half-packed suitcases and equipment cases. A strange melancholy settled over me despite the excitement ahead. This tiny space had witnessed my absolute rock bottom, the place where I'd sobbed on the floor when the electricity was cut, where I'd finally chosen my authentic voice over my brother's conditional support. I picked up my guitar and began playing softly, a new melody that had been haunting me for days. Lyrics formed naturally, not about betrayal or struggle this time, but about the unexpected gifts found in our darkest moments. About gratitude for the rock bottom that becomes foundation rather than ending. My phone rang, interrupting the creative flow. An unknown number that I almost ignored. Something made me answer. Hello? Is this Sophia Chen? The male voice was unfamiliar, professional. Yes, this is she. My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm calling from the Thompson Foundation. We fund an annual award for emerging independent artists demonstrating exceptional artistic integrity and potential. My heart raced as he continued. Your name has been put forward by several of our advisors. The award includes a substantial grant to support your next creative project, with no strings attached regarding content or direction. By the time the call ended, I was sitting on the floor, tears streaming down my face. The grant amount was significant, enough to fund a proper album without financial compromise, to pay my band and crew fairly, to create the music videos I'd been sketching in my notebook but couldn't afford to produce. More meaningful than the money was the validation from an organization known for identifying artists of substance rather than commercial potential. They saw value in exactly what I had refused to compromise, my authentic voice and vision. I called Lena immediately, barely coherent through happy tears. I know exactly what this means, she said when I finally managed to explain. This changes everything while changing nothing. You can create exactly what you want, just with proper resources now. The tour launched the following week to enthusiastic audiences across the country. Night after night, I watched people connect with lyrics born from my darkest moments, singing along to choruses that had once been private expressions of pain. The post-show meet and greets became profound exchanges rather than mere autograph sessions. Listeners sharing how specific songs had helped them through their own struggles. In Denver, a woman my age waited until the line had cleared. I lost everything last year, she told me quietly. My job, my relationship, my apartment, conditional, found me when I was sleeping on a friend's floor, feeling like a complete failure. Her eyes held mine steadily. It reminded me that rock bottom can be a beginning, not just an ending. I'm in nursing school now. These connections, human, specific, meaningful, became the true measure of success. Not streaming numbers or venue sizes, but the tangible impact of creative honesty on real lives. Midway through the tour, while performing in Chicago, I spotted a familiar face in the back row. Jason, my ex-bandmate, whose betrayal had contributed to my financial collapse. He disappeared before the meet and greet, but a message arrived the next morning. You were right about everything. Your way was better. I'm sorry. The acknowledgement brought unexpected closure. Jason had once represented everything I feared. The crushing disappointment of creative partnership gone wrong. The potential consequences of trusting the wrong people with my music and heart. Now his words carried no power over me, neither validation nor condemnation. I had moved beyond needing his approval or fearing his criticism. As the tour progressed eastward, requests for interviews multiplied. Media outlets that had ignored the EP release now wanted exclusive content, profile pieces, and performance segments. Lena helped me navigate these opportunities carefully, prioritizing publications that focused on the music itself, rather than manufacturing a marketable personal narrative. When asked about my overnight success, I consistently corrected the narrative. There was nothing overnight about it, I explained in one particularly thoughtful podcast interview. What you're seeing is the result of years of work, a devastating rock bottom, and the decision to value authenticity over commercial appeal. The audience found me when I stopped trying to be what the industry wanted and started being exactly who I am. The podcast host, a respected music journalist who had championed independent artists for decades, nodded appreciatively. That's precisely why it's connecting so deeply, he said. People are starving for music that doesn't feel focus grouped and manufactured. Your rock bottom became your superpower. His words stayed with me, reshaping how I understood my journey. My lowest point, losing everything, facing homelessness, being abandoned by those I counted on, had indeed become my greatest strength. It had stripped away every pretense and compromise, leaving only the essential truth of who I was as an artist and person. The tour culminated in a sold-out show in Boston, where I'd been booked into a historic theater with twice the capacity of any venue we'd played previously. The significance wasn't lost on me. Marcus had built his career in Boston, establishing his industry credentials in the same music scene that was now embracing my diametrically opposite approach. To my surprise, he requested tickets for the show, along with my father. "If that's okay with you," he added carefully when he called. "I understand if it's not." "It's more than okay," I replied, meaning it. "I'd like you both there." The night of the Boston show, I stood backstage watching through a gap in the curtain as the venue filled. Elena appeared beside me, handing me a steaming mug of honey lemon tea. "Nervous?" she asked. "Grateful," I corrected. "I almost gave up on all of this. If you hadn't given me somewhere to stay when everything fell apart." She bumped my shoulder gently. "You would have found another way. That's who you are. The person who keeps going when there's no logical reason to believe things will improve." When I took the stage that night, the energy was electric. Not the manufactured excitement of a pop concert, but the reverent anticipation of an audience connecting deeply with the music. I spotted my father and Marcus in the fifth row, their expressions a mixture of pride and wonder. I began with "Conditional," the song that had started everything, the raw expression of choosing authenticity over conditional acceptance. As the final chord faded, I spoke directly to the audience for the first time that night. A year ago, I was at rock bottom, broke, homeless, abandoned by people I thought I could count on. I had to decide whether to compromise my music for security or stay true to my voice and risk everything. I strummed softly. This next song is about that choice, and it's called Foundation. The new composition, written the night before the tour began, flowed through me with unusual power. The lyrics traced my journey from devastation to rebuilding, from conditional relationships to unconditional self-acceptance. When I reached the bridge, I found myself looking directly at Marcus. "Thank you for walking away when I needed support the most, you taught me I was stronger alone than compromised together." His eyes glistened in the stage lights, a complex mix of regret and understanding passing between us. This wasn't an accusation but an acknowledgement. His betrayal had ultimately freed me to find my true voice. After the show, my dressing room overflowed with well-wishers, industry representatives, and fans who had somehow gained backstage access. In the chaos, Marcus approached cautiously, waiting until the crowd had thinned before speaking. "That new song," he said quietly. "It's the best thing you've ever written." "Because it's the most honest," I replied. He nodded, understanding dawning in his expression. That's what I never got before. How power comes from vulnerability, not from polished perfection. He hesitated. "I'm launching that independent Division 1 mentioned. Artists with authentic voices, minimal interference, fair contracts. I'd value your input on how it should work, if you're willing." The offer represented something I hadn't anticipated. The opportunity to help change the system from within, to create space for other artists to maintain their integrity while reaching their audiences. "I can't be the face of it," I clarified. "My path is set, but I'll consult, help you understand what artists actually need versus what executives think they need." Our conversation was interrupted by Lena, who burst in with uncharacteristic excitement. "The Thompson Foundation just called. They want to fund a documentary about your journey, from rock bottom to rebuilding on your own terms. Complete creative control, global distribution." The news was overwhelming. Another platform to share not just my music, but the message behind it. The potential to reach people struggling through their own rock bottom moments, to offer hope that devastation can become foundation. In the year that followed, life expanded in ways I could never have predicted. The documentary project took shape alongside recording sessions for a full-length album funded by the Thompson Grant. My touring schedule grew more selective but more impactful, focusing on venues and festivals where the audience connection was prioritized over commercial considerations. Marcus and I established a cautious but meaningful professional relationship, alongside our rebuilding sibling bond. His independent artist division became a respected industry outlier, offering truly artist-friendly contracts and development processes informed by my experiences and insights. My financial situation stabilized completely, not with extravagant wealth, but with sustainable security built on diversified revenue streams from touring, streaming, sync placements, and merchandise. I moved from my tiny apartment to a modest house with a dedicated studio space, creating a home base that reflected stability without excess. Elena remained my closest friend and most trusted advisor, eventually leaving the cafe to join Lena's team full-time as an artist development coordinator, bringing her instinctive understanding of authentic expression to other emerging musicians. The documentary premiered at South by Southwest to critical acclaim, its unflinching portrayal of artistic integrity resonating far beyond music industry circles. Viewers connected with the universal experience of rock bottom and the possibility of rebuilding on one's own terms. Perhaps most meaningful were the messages that arrived daily from viewers and listeners who found hope in my story. People facing their own moments of devastation who discovered the courage to choose authenticity over compromise, to trust their own voice when everyone else advised safer paths. A young songwriter approached me after a showcase in Nashville, clutching a worn notebook. I was ready to quit, she admitted. Every producer wanted to change my sound, make me more marketable. Your documentary made me brave enough to say no, to keep looking until I found people who understood my vision. These moments became my true measure of success, not awards or commercial milestones, but the tangible impact of choosing integrity over expediency, of transforming rock bottom into solid foundation. On the second anniversary of my lowest point, the day Marcus had issued his ultimatum, and I had chosen my authentic path, I returned to the streetlight coffee house where it all began. Elena had arranged a secret show, inviting only those who had been part of my journey: Lena and her team, the session musicians who had become friends, my father, and even Marcus. The space was intimate, the energy electric with shared history and mutual respect. I performed a set tracing the entire arc from desperation to rebuilding, ending with the newest composition, a reflection on how our darkest moments often contain the seeds of our greatest strength. As the final notes faded, I shared the philosophy that had emerged from my journey. Rock bottom strips away everything but your essential truth. When you rebuild from that place, without compromise, without pretense, you create something unshakable. Success isn't measured in fame or fortune, but in the courage to remain authentic when every easier path requires compromise. Looking around the room at the people who had witnessed my collapse and supported my rebuilding, each in their own way, at their own time, I felt a completion that had nothing to do with achievement and everything to do with alignment. My external circumstances now matched my internal truth, creating harmony instead of dissonance. My brother approached after the show, something in his expression more open than I had seen since childhood. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if I had helped you that day," he said thoughtfully. "If I had offered support instead of ultimatums." "I know exactly what would have happened," I replied. "I would have compromised to please you, to secure that help. I would have written safer songs, taken safer paths. I needed to lose everything to find the courage to be completely myself." He nodded slowly. "Sometimes betrayal is the greatest gift, though that doesn't excuse it." "No," I agreed, "but it explains why rock bottom became my foundation. I had nowhere to go but into absolute authenticity." Quote, "The documentary's final scene was filmed that night, not a triumphant stadium show or award acceptance, but this intimate gathering of the people who had witnessed my journey from devastation to rebuilding. The closing shot captured me speaking directly to the camera, offering the wisdom earned through loss and rediscovery. Your lowest point is not your ending. It's the place where you discover what truly matters, what cannot be compromised or abandoned. When everything external is stripped away, your essential truth remains. Build from that place, and you create something no success or failure can ever take from you." In the years since that pivotal moment when I chose authenticity over security, My definition of success has transformed completely. It's measured not in streams or sales, but in alignment. The harmony between my inner truth and outer expression, the integrity that connects my music directly to those who need it most. Rock bottom wasn't my destruction, but my initiation, the painful but necessary stripping away of everything that wasn't essential. From that cleared ground, I built something authentic and unshakable. Not a towering monument to commercial achievement, but a solid foundation of creative integrity that supports a life of meaning and connection. As I often tell emerging artists who seek my advice, don't fear the fall to rock bottom. Fear instead a lifetime of compromises that prevent you from ever discovering your true voice. The ground may feel hard when you hit it, but it's also the only place from which you can build something real. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.